Hey everybody, Dr. Isabell here, marriage and relationship therapist with a little pop of personal growth because frankly, therapy is just too darn expensive. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is loving your parents for who they are and who they are not. So to be able to love our parents is to really get who they're not and to get who they are. That are not our parents, but who are these people who have never healed themselves, that can be absolutely clueless, that have not done any personal growth work, that have never had, their own sense of self-worth, self-esteem, never felt like they were good enough. All the ways that they struggled in their own childhood, how they were not emotionally supported in the ways that were, important to them. And what happens is, of course, they all get together. They bear these children, which are who we are today, right? And we're dealing with the byproduct of two parents who are clueless, really. They are clueless in terms of really getting how to be a great parent, right? And so we don't want to hold this against them, okay? We want to create a sense of empowerment for you so that you can, when you are coming on the close of your life, you can be free of resentment and anger and sadness and pain and hatred, as a matter of fact, towards one or both of your parents for not being there for you, for disappointing you, for letting you down, for not loving you in the ways that you actually deserve to be loved, how they were not able and capable of being there for you and being great parents. So the reason is because they lack awareness. They're not empowered people. These are people who don't feel whole. At the end of the day, they're not really whole. How you develop into somebody who is whole is you take accountability for your life. You get clear on who you are, why you are the way that you are, why you are the way that you're not, the impact that you are on other people's lives, and how you take full ownership and responsibility for everything that's going on in life, especially being a parent as well. But these aren't the parents that we got. No, we didn't get these kinds of parents. So we got parents who are really wounded children who have never healed themselves. That's who we got. And so what ends up happening is this transgenerational wounding where, we experience these traumas in our childhood. And I mean traumas like emotional neglect and, maybe physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, the criticisms, the lack of attentiveness, never feeling like we were good enough for our parents, maybe. And all of those experiences of not feeling loved and accepted by our parents. So what happens is we're living under this sadness, this grief, this anger, this frustration of not having the parents that we deserve. Everybody deserves loving, caring, emotionally attentive parents who get how to emotionally be there for their children. But no, we are dealing with parents who are human beings who were never taught. This is not innate. This is how to be a great parent. How to be a great parent and be there for your children is to have incredible self-awareness of, what children need, how to be there for children. Our parents were struggling. Our parents didn't get it. Our parents were approaching parenting in a way that they were trying. So my mom and dad, they split up. It was shitty. what ended up happening, here I was, a little kid, I'm like 12, 13 years old. This total disconnect is going on for years in my family. They finally split up. In the little bit that I did remember about my mom, she's like now working 3 jobs because she's raising 4 kids. This is like back in the day, right? Where, your parents split up and either the mom or the dad or somebody takes all the kids, and it's this big disconnect. And so she's working 3 jobs, hand to mouth, we're on welfare and the whole bit, right? And my dad, of course, is like 1,500 miles away. He's just doing his, new dad life, getting married, having, more kids, divorcing, getting married again, having more kids, divorcing, getting married again, having more kids. So it's like, when you just take a look at who these people are that are our parents, and if you start to really become aware of the fact that they don't have tools, they don't have distinction, they don't, for the most part, they don't have that self-love, they don't have that empowerment, they don't have that healing from their own childhood wounded experiences. So it's a multi-generational, wounding. And so we want to break the dysfunction in this chain. We want to break the cycle. We, as children of our parents, right, who are now raising children and parents ourselves, for many, many of you. And if you're not parents to children, maybe you're parenting animals or, but you're trying to be responsible adults, empowered adults. And the thing that we want most in the world is to feel connected and loved by our parent. Because no matter how old you are, you want to feel that parent-child relationship. It's like, it's primal. It's like, it's what we want. So I want to share a little story, okay, about my dad and I, and what our relationship used to be like when I made everything personal and I did not get who my dad was, and I was not being accepting of my dad in any way. And then what my relationship is with my dad today. You guys are going to like this story. It's a good story. I sometimes share this story with my clients who struggle to find compassion and love for their parents. And they're always just like carrying on that wound, right? So we want to move beyond that. We want to break the link in the dysfunctional chain of wounded individuals who become adults, okay? So I did some personal growth work, and then it afforded me the opportunity to experience my dad in a whole new way. So this is what happened. So my story is, when I grew up, my parents were always kind of just fighting. Like, you could hear it from the top of the stairs, kind of listening down. There's the 4 of us children, and then, my mom and my dad. And it was like I had this dad who was always gallivanting all over the country, doing whatever he wanted and doing whoever he wanted. And my mom was at home trying to be, a great mom. She was an artist, an activist. She was this amazing person. But I didn't see her a lot either, because she was kind of doing her thing too. But for the most part, they're out there doing their thing, and they have these kids. And there's this experience in the home where there's all this fear, especially for me, that the family is just going to end. It's gonna blow up, and the family unit, or that sense of stability, emotional stability, is not going to be there. And of course, my biggest fear came true when my parents finally divorced. I was 13 years of age. I had an older brother and 2 younger sisters. I have lots more brothers and sisters today. half brothers and sisters that I adore. So my family is really large, but when we started off, it was the four of us kids and my parents. And so what happened is my parents divorced and my mom moved us 1,500 miles away to Florida, and my dad stayed up in Massachusetts. And what I was carrying for years is this sadness, anger, pain, and resentment towards my dad for not insisting on being in my life, like after the divorce. Like, insisting that I, come and visit him, and we have these, great, close, connective, experiences. No, that's not really what happened. My dad was doing my dad, and if I saw him, it was because I made the effort, right? And then when I was around my dad, I felt like I never really had his attention. He was a business owner, and he was kind of, his attention was always split into everything that he was managing in his life, or whatever the relationship of the year was that he was in currently, kind of managing all of that as well. And my dad is super ADD on top of it all, right? So I just wanted these kind of connective conversations where I felt like my dad gave a shit about me and would be like, hey, Isabell, so, how's it going? Tell me what's going on. And it really wasn't like that. So what ended up happening was I would be in these conversations with my dad, and I would try to tell him what I was doing, what I was up to. And this was for years, right? Every time I'd call him or what have you, my fantasy was that we were going to be in these great connective conversations. But what my dad kept doing all the time is cutting me off. We would be talking, and he'd be like, oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that reminds me of the time when da 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 da. And I would be like, well, Dad, I'm, okay, that's really great, but, I was not finished really saying what I was saying, constantly cutting me off from the constant, as if I was talking to a wall. And so I never felt heard by my dad, ever, my whole life. And it's all that I wanted with my dad, is to be heard by my dad. Because if my dad could be present for me, in a conversation, I would be like, wow, my dad gets me, and wow, I feel so loved by my dad. But nope, years, nothing, nada. So what happened was, about 10 years ago, I did a bunch of personal growth work. It was some big stuff. And part of the homework was to call whoever in your life that you felt that you were harboring resentment and anger towards, right? That was really thwarting your relationship. Something that you would want, but there was something in the way. So of course, I thought about my dad, and through this particular weekend that was very, very powerful, where I really got clear on who my dad was, that was this 12-year-old boy who never grew up emotionally, who was just so kind of in alignment with, the behavior of an adolescent, consistently. But when we're kids, we see our parents, and we have this expectation, and of course it's kind of unconscious, right? We're little, they're big, they know it all, they know how to, they're responsible for our well-being, we're dependent on them, whether or not we feel good about ourselves, comes from their approval, this whole thing, right? We all know that. So I call up my dad, and it was about 10 years ago. He didn't pick up the cell phone, so I just left a long message, a 10-minute message. And I shared with him on the phone how I wanted to take responsibility for harboring all this resentment towards him for years that didn't allow us to feel the love. And so on the call, I said, Dad, I just want to let you know that who I'm going to be for you is an amazingly loving, unconditional loving daughter. And that I am not going to be carrying all this anger, resentment towards you anymore. I just accept you for who you are, who you're not. And, I just want to honor you for being my dad. I'm such an amazing person today, and I would not be here. I wouldn't be this amazing person for so many people in the world if it wasn't for my dad that I'm here, right? So I just said I just want to spend every opportunity in my lifetime going forward into the future, finding new ways to love you and be loved by you. So I'm leaving this awesome message on his answering machine. Okay, great. So a few years goes by. Oh, by the way, of course, he acknowledged that conversation. And you know what he did? He called me up. I remember now. So what happens is, that was mind-blowing and amazing, was he calls me up and he said, so Isabell, I want to talk to you about, the message. And so I get on the phone with him and he says to me, I didn't know that that's how you felt about me. I understand I was shitty, to your mom, your mom didn't deserve the way that I treated her. And, I totally get that I wasn't there for you kids. I get that. And, I just get that. But I never sensed that you were ever harboring anything towards me. So he's again, self-awareness, right? So it's all good. And I just said, yeah, this is my new commitment to our relationship, Dad. This is kind of how I want to be with you now. I want to love you. This is, and I'm going to love you. And I'm going to take responsibility for creating the relationship that I want with you, because I'm the one with tools and the healing and I have the ability to do that. My dad doesn't know how to create a profoundly close, loving relationship. My dad's just, being my dad, the 12-year-old, right? So I'm not going to punish him, which is what I was doing. I was hurting myself by punishing my dad, by withholding my love for my dad for years. And it really hurt me. My dad was freaking clueless. He was like, what? Harbored resentment? What resentment? What? And so, yeah. So I was like, no. Damn it, I can do this. I can create a profoundly loving, close relationship with my dad. I deserve that. That's what I want. So what was really cool, you guys, as I was on a conversation with my dad one day, and he was kind of complaining, being the victim mentality, telling me about, whatever wasn't working in his life. And I was kind of I don't want to play therapist with my dad, it's kind of I don't want to give my dad advice. I'm no, I want my dad to be my dad, and I just want to be his daughter. I don't want to be, some sort of therapist daughter, version. And so I said to my dad, hey Dad, you know what? I just want to let you know that, I said, I have a request. And my request is that all of our conversations going forward, from today going forward, are void of negativity. I don't see you very much. I don't talk to you often enough. So I want to have all of our conversations, whatever they may be, however long or short, I want them to be positive. And I want them to be you checking in with me. I get a chance to share about what's going on in my life. You can hear me. And then you, in turn, can do that. Tell me what's working in your life, right? And let me connect with you on that level. And then let's just have that be the conversation. That's what I really want. So he kept having these subsequent conversations with me where how he would show up on the phone is he would be this negative person. And then one day I said to him on the call, I said, Dad, listen, remember our deal, right? Like, the request I had was, I'm not up for all this negativity and all the drama and listening to your, like, that's not the conversation I want to be in. So what I want to do is I want to support you, like, addressing all of that stuff that keeps you being the victim in your life. And so I sent him to this personal growth weekend. So check this out, okay? Like, my dad doesn't do personal growth weekends, okay? You're gonna love, love, love this story. So this is what happens. Let me get over here, right-hand lane. Okay. So my dad goes to this personal growth weekend, right? And a couple days later, he comes back from the weekend and I give him a call to follow up to say, you know, like, how was the weekend, Dad? Like, oh my God, what happened? So I call him up and I go, Dad, so how was the weekend? You know what he says to me? I said, what did you get? What did you get from your participation in this weekend? And he goes, I got that I don't listen to people. Like for my dad, like, right? And I was just like, oh my God, my dad finally got that he is not present for people. Like, he's just not present. And he gets this. And I'm just like, it gets even better. So I'm like, wow, Dad, that's like amazing. Oh my God, like, it's big. Awesome. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. Like, now you get to bring in to all of your relationships with people this awareness about like being present or not being present for them, right? And he's like, yeah. So I go on this trip, and this is like a couple years later, a couple years pass by. I go on this trip, and I'm in Atlanta, and I'm coming, and I'm driving on the freeway back down to Florida to come home, and I, you know, like how we always do when we're on the freeway and we've got these long drives, we're like, oh shit, you know, like, who do we need to call, who we haven't talked to in our family forever? You know, we got to kind of like check those boxes, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to call my dad and check in, see how my dad's doing. So I call up my dad, and I'm on the freeway, and I said, hey Dad, it's Isabell. He goes, hey Isabell, how you doing? I said, oh, I'm good. I'm just coming back from this weekend up in Atlanta, this kind of conference thing I had to do. And he's like, oh, really? How was it? And I start to share. I was like, oh, well, this is what happened. And you know, I did this and that, and then I visited my friends, and we did this and that. And I start to share. And, about like 5 minutes goes by, 5-10 minutes goes by, and I go, Dad, are you there? Dad, are you there? And he goes, yeah, I'm here. And I go, I was just driving, Dad, and then I for a second there, I thought, like, you know, the call dropped, and I was like sitting there just like rambling on in the conversation, and, you know, the call had been dropped, and he goes, no, I was just listening to you. So, of course, I'm driving down the freeway, and I'm just like bawling. I'm just bawling because my dad, right? Like, he's listening to me. Like, he's listening to me. And so I feel important to him. It makes me feel, you know, it made me and still makes me feel loved. You know, to be heard is to be loved. So the story, it keeps going. It gets good. I just say, you know, thank you, Dad. And I just kind of affirm with him, you know, how important it is for me that he hears me, and just how thrilled I am to finally be in this kind of relationship with him where, that was like the radio went on. That I finally get to be in this relationship with him that, you know, we can kind of hit the ball back and forth to each other in terms of our conversation. I can get him, he can get me, and it creates this closeness, right? And that's really all it is. And it makes me, you know, it's like so authentic because we're both like present for each other, no matter how short the conversation is. So what ends up happening is then some years are going by, and this is what I really want you guys to get to is even though my dad does this personal growth, even though my dad starts to create a greater awareness about being present, right? And especially for me, he's like wired, he's like hardwired not to be this person. So instead of being upset with him when in a conversation he reverts back to that old kind of cutting me off and what have you, I just lovingly remind him by saying, Dad, what? Well, Dad, I wasn't finished talking. You kind of cut me off. Oh, for crying out loud. I'm so sorry, Isabell. I'm so sorry. No, please finish what you were saying. So there's this thing about him that now, you know, he's really emotionally willing to like make that adjustment and take ownership of his lack of, you know, consistency with being present, right? But like, I give him a pass because like I get he's committed to doing it. He's committed to it. He gets it. He understands it. It's not natural for him. He's not like built to be this person. And so he's so like accommodating now. It's not like he gets defensive and goes, you know, well, you know, like just being negative towards me for reminding him, right? He's not negative. He doesn't bark at me. He thanks me and he apologizes. Like, it's like this is where I feel loved by him. Is he's like, oh, please, Isabell, like help us have this kind of connection. And so what I want to say to all of you is this. Our parents are just these people that, again, have never done the work, have never healed themselves, are not really whole, you know, that are just kind of struggling in their own ways, right? Trying to always like make it in the world. And they're basically always in like survival mode, and they lack self-awareness, and they struggle, like I said, with self-hate or, you know, the ways that they harm themselves or that they don't take care of themselves. They don't exercise, they don't eat right, you know, they drink too much, they're on a million different medications. They're struggling. Our parents are struggling. So instead of punishing your parents, which is only, you're the loser. You're the one that's losing out. They're kind of clueless. They're like, they have no power when it comes to creating closeness and connection and relationship. They're powerless. They don't get it. It's not like they get it, but they're like, I'm not gonna create any closeness with Isabell. You know, she's not worthy. Like, no, are you kidding me? They're clueless, don't know how to do it. But when we take responsibility for our life, we heal ourselves, we do that work, we get to live in a life where we love people, including our parents, for who they are and who they are not. Because to love someone is to love who they're not. That is a part of who they are. And we have that as well, the who we're not part, you know, that other people experience in us. So we're all imperfect. We're all just human beings trying to do the best that we can. So the takeaway for all of you today is, I hope that you can consider everything that I shared about in terms of these distinctions and, like how to lead empowered lives and how to let go and how to love people, for who they are and who they're not. And that's not to say that, of course, putting healthy boundaries in place. If we have parents that are destructive, that are harmful to us, that are like overtly just like, unhealthy people that are just having their like way with our life, of course we're going to put in boundaries. That's a very, very important distinction, ability that we have got to implement. This is the way that we take responsibility and take care of ourselves. But instead of having the story about, how horrible our parents are, is to really get who they are and who they're not. So we can love them, even though maybe we choose not to have them in our lives because they're so destructive, up until, maybe considering having them back in our lives because they know not what they do, So we want to break the link in this dysfunctional generational chain. We just do. Our own sense of empowerment and our personal power is really on the table. So just getting all of this clear is really what I want for you. And so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share a little bit about myself. Even therapists have work to do. And we're all just journeying together. We're all imperfect. And the most important distinction about being a human being is to know that we can lead powerful, empowered, fulfilling, satisfying, happy, joyful lives when we are willing to heal ourselves and get clear about, what's going on, so we can get back to the business of being loving, unconditionally loving, and compassionate people. So I love you guys, and go to my website if you're looking for any additional resources. I have collected incredible articles and blogs that other people have written, books that they've written. I've researched all kinds of personal growth retreats for individuals, for couples, for whomever, to heal and grow and become the amazing people that we are all meant to be. So I hope that you take advantage of what could be your life-changing experiences as well. I love you. Bye-bye.